So I just need a moment to just be up here. So please just allow me to just flow a little bit. So I always like to do these talks by just showing a little bit of vulnerability. I think vulnerability is a powerful tool that we have in connecting with each other. And just being in this space brings up a lot for me. I had a conversation with Joy earlier. And I was telling her about how I was born in Ghana in West Africa, and I moved to the Bronx. And I lived there for about 11 years. And living in the Bronx, I was always sort of an outcast because I was the darkest kid in the room. I was a funny-looking immigrant. And then I moved from the Bronx to an hour upstate New York for high school, where then I was surrounded by predominantly white people. And again, feeling like this outsider, feeling like this outcast. From there I went to college, and prior to that, a lot of that feeling like an outcast, what that led me to do is really kind of go internal. And it got me really interested in psychology and into consciousness. And I remember spending my lunch periods in high school just going to the library to read about these things. And so when I got to college, that was the moment where I had an opportunity to experience psychedelics, which I got introduced to cognitively in high school, but then finally felt like I was in a protected space, so to speak, to actually have that experience. And still, I never felt like I belonged in any space. And the first time that I felt like I was with my people was the first psychedelic conference that I went to. And to be here in this space right now with a lot of people who I'm sure have gone through the same experiences is mind-blowing and amazing. So please, give it up to the people who made this happen. And so my experience, I think, subconsciously led me to wanting to create safe spaces for other people, because I had a hard time finding that. And so I was really interested in the Zendo Project. I wanted to get into psychedelic therapy, and the Zendo Project for me seemed extremely inaccessible. Sorry, Rick, I don't know if you're in here. Wonderful work, but I couldn't afford to go to Burning Man. I couldn't afford to go to Africa Burn. But this work seemed so important. So a couple of my friends, we went to a Zendo training when it was in New York City, and it was close to us, and we can go and we can learn about the principles of psychedelic harm reduction. We had that opportunity, and we took it and decided, we can just do this ourselves. And so that led us to creating, the Sanctuary Project, where we've been able to serve a few projects, a few festivals over the span of 3 years. And so on the right, you'll be able to see our yurt that we have. And so we have one festival that has bought so heavily into the system that they have co-invested with us to create a permanent space at that festival so that we can have harm reduction there indefinitely. And yes, seriously. And so that's sort of a model that we need to see replicated, because we like to say that this isn't just psychedelic harm reduction, this is festival first aid. And all of these experiences that are happening without the proper containers, right? But the thing is, yes, this is a beautiful thing that this is happening at this festival, but this needs to kind of be brought out into the community, right? So peer support. So peer support provides a supportive environment, a specialized care, education to help transform difficult experiences and emotional experiences into opportunities for learning and growth. The big thing, I think, is that it helps to facilitate communities being engaged in conversations around psychedelics and drugs and being able to hold space for one another. And so these principles can be shown in various ways. Either it's that hands-on psychedelic harm reduction model, or it could be drug testing, right? But we have to get into a space where we're comfortable having these conversations and not demonizing these tools and being more of the mind that there is this pleasure activism that we can have from having these experiences, that we can take hold of ourselves, our cognitive liberties, but then have to do it in a safe way. And so peer support can differ from if you look at the context of a festival, you have a medical way to deal with psychedelic issues, you have the securities way to deal with psychedelic issues, and then you have the peer support model. In the medical way, you might be restraining chemically with things like ketamine, which I know they do at the Zendo Project, Zendo in Burning Man. And the security model can look like tying people down and screaming at them, "What did you take?" which I've seen happen. The peer support model just completely takes a different route, where it's not trying to stop this experience, but holding space so that we can facilitate the experience and allow it to develop naturally on its own and just create safety around that experience. And so it even differs from people who are coming in with experience in yoga as like yoga healers, or they do Kundalini yoga, or they're massage therapists, and the peer support model is not necessarily a space for that, right? So this is one of those things, like in psychedelic therapy, you have to check your past experiences at the door. They say that when you're doing this psychedelic therapy, particularly psychedelic therapy, you have to go in with a beginner's mind, right? Whatever psychodynamic or psychoanalytical experiences that you've had, leave those behind, because every person is a unique individual. They're all going through their own experiences, and you can't put this framework, this preconceived notion of what their experience is on them, because then you're totally going to start directing their experience in a different way, right? And so that psychedelic peer support model is all about allowing the person who's having this experience to have it genuinely, and to go through it in a way that's going to be ultimately healing for them. And so we're going to get into a few of those operational things, right? How do we take these ideas, the spirit of harm reduction, the spirit of peer support, and actually apply it? So harm reduction, we define it as a set of strategies and ideas aimed at reducing negative consequences associated with drug use. So you want to increase awareness and knowledge about them. You want to create a more well-informed and conscious community and have honest conversations about them. I think that sometimes we can have a bias about psychedelics, and that we love them so much that sometimes we forget that we have to be honest about the risks that are associated with them. And when we go in with these biases, sometimes people can, as Carl Hurt talked about, you need to know the dose, you need to know what's in it, right? And we forget about these things. It's fine, it's just acid, it's just psilocybin, it's natural, no problems. There can be a lot of problems associated with it. And it scares me personally seeing that a lot of the decriminalization that's happening, the questions that I'm always asking is, where are the community supports around all of those things? Because I fully believe in cognitive liberty, but at the same time, we need to have communities that are providing education and safety around those experiences. Because those containers, the container that we're creating isn't just about a safe space between you and I, you having that experience and me holding space for it. The safe container is also the community, the larger community around that. And so, a lot of these things, they're all about difficult experiences. And so with these experiences, with these psychedelic experiences, you have the subconscious becoming conscious. And so Sam Groff, who, founder of transpersonal psychology and holotropic breathwork, which was the framework for developing these psychedelic therapies, calls psychedelics a non-specific amplifier. And so we have all of these things that are bubbling underneath the surface that could be from past traumas, difficulties that we haven't fully resolved. And a lot of fear and anxiety can come out of those experiences bubbling to the surface, right? And so the thing is, with these difficult experiences, these are massive opportunities for healing, right? And so with difficult experiences, we want to be diving into them. You want to feel them. You don't want to turn away from them, because the true healing happens when you have these difficult experiences and you really dive in. And for me personally, I know the experiences that have really changed my life have been absolutely the most difficult ones. And I'm sure a lot of people here can say the same. And so again, psychedelics can be transformative within the right context, within the right settings. They can be in shamanistic settings, they can be in therapeutic settings, they can be in this peer support model. And I think the thing that's important to understand amongst all of those different modalities is having this concept of this inner healer, right? That we all have the capacity to heal ourselves, and our roles, be it as, guides or whatever you want to call it, require an understanding of this inner healer. And so peer support does not provide medical care or treatment. It's not about clinical interventions, legal assessments, so on and so forth, mental health services. And so in doing this talk, a huge intention is for you guys to take this information. And I have a short amount of time, but I really want you guys to come to me afterwards if you want resources that can help you further develop your practice, right? Your ability to not be necessarily a psychedelic therapist. Not everybody's going to be a psychedelic therapist. We can all be psychedelic healers for ourselves and other people. And so if anybody wants to come and get resources from me, I'd be happy to talk to you. So the meat of it, the principles of psychedelic harm reduction. So the first one is creating a safe space. You are the safe space first and foremost, right? And so not only you're creating safety, but you're creating the perception of safety, because that's equally as important. People who are having these experiences are having all of this transference going on, where they're having these internal experiences and projecting them onto other people, right? And so it's so important that in holding space for people, you yourself are a grounded presence that can be calming and non-judgmental. And also, you have to set some boundaries. And so setting agreements, right, with somebody. Maybe somebody's asking you, hey, can you sit with me? It's super important that one of the first things that you do is, what is this going to look like, and what agreements are we going to follow, right? What is touch going to look like? How much consent is going to be required in this situation, right? How are we going to talk about violence and the expression of anger? And so having these agreements set that you can have conversations about them are going to be really important. And also body language, just the way that you look, the way that you present yourself, mirroring. One of the festivals that we did, we had somebody who came, typical story, who was just in a really good mood, and he was half naked, and he was just kind of dancing around and jumping around. And he got brought to us, and what did? We danced around and jumped around with them. And then he started looking at the fire, and he wanted to jump in the fire, and I was like, no, let's go dance around and jump around over here, right? And so just kind of mirroring and following their movements is something that can be really helpful in holding space for people. Inviting people to share the experience if they want to. Some people who are having these experiences, they're going inward, don't feel the need that something needs to be happening, that they need to be sharing their experience, right? You don't know what's going on inside of their head. So really just remembering that it's good to be comfortable with silence. It's good to be comfortable with just this empty space, because there's a lot of healing that's happening there. Sitting and not guiding. So again, all of these principles, so we have creating a safe space, sitting and not guiding, talking through, not down, and then difficult is not bad. And sitting, not guiding is about trusting that inner healer. Trusting that you are not directing this experience, right? You're not trying to get them to a certain goal. Check your personal goals for them at the door, because at the end of this experience that they have, they could be extremely angry, but you wanted them to be happy and holding you and hugging you and thanking you. Maybe that's not the case, but that's totally okay, right? That's trusting that their inner healer is guiding them in the right direction. And so some of the stuff Sarah Gill, I believe, said that with holding space for people with psychedelics, doing less is more, right? And so just withdrawing some of this natural inclination that we have to fix and to write, and just allowing their experiences to be. The next is talking through and not down. We don't want to shut down these experiences. We want them to allow it to happen. We don't want to turn them away from it. And if they are having something that they would describe as a bad time, maybe we can reframe that and say, maybe you're having a difficult time. Maybe it's hard. It's a hard experience, but it's not necessarily bad, right? And so we want to avoid rushing through whatever sort of angst that they might be experiencing and trying to find a solution. And so again, lastly, difficult is not bad, right? And so strength, resilience, surrender, and deep wisdom are often forged in the fires lit in our darkest times. Those difficult experiences are the ones that define us. Those are the ones that provide us with the energy that we need to move through life. It's those difficult experiences that we're having that might make us cry and feel all of this body sensation. That's weakness and pain leaving the body, right? And so allow it to happen. So just to sort of wrap up, I just kind of want to just connect with you guys for a bit and just look away from the screen. Because I think it's so important that we get into this idea of community healing. And every single one of you in here, you guys are healers already. That's what brought you here in some way, shape, or form. Be it through becoming a psychedelic therapist or being an educator in your community, right? There are so many ways for you to become a community healer. And all of this stuff is for naught if you're not taking it back to your communities, right? And first and foremost, we have to think about like healing for ourselves, right? Not just for the people around us, because that's where it starts. You heal yourself, you heal the world. And so there's like a phrase that I really like regarding psychedelics, and it's that, we tend to say that we're using psychedelics, and I think psychedelics are using us, And so when you think about this predictable shift in values and this way of shifting the way that we want to approach and engage with our world, you see this grand vision that's happening all over the globe. And this is like an aspect of losing your ego where it's not about me, I'm a vessel for what the psychedelics want, right? And so all of you guys here are vessels for what the psychedelics want. And so trust your intuition, follow your passions, right? And go out there and do the frickin' thing. Thank you.